On today's episode, we welcomed back for the third time, or maybe fourth, I'm not sure, Bhaskar Goswami, who is honestly transformational. We love him. We've known him for so long. And every time we speak with him, we have these amazing, profound, insightful conversations. And today was really interesting because we kind of just touched on so many different subjects involving humanity, like beauty in life. And I think there were some very key things that he said that, or takeaways that he said during this episode that anyone can benefit from.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that the timing of the episode is very good because we're living in a bit of a chaotic time, and tapping into how you find joy, happiness, abundance, and peace in very unstable, or what is perceived to be unstable times, chaotic times, is there feels to me that there's a bit of a disconnect for a lot of people,
Mm.
how to manage it all, like how to
Yeah.
manage what's going on and the changes and the disruptions that we're feeling and that we're witnessing at this time of our lives. So I think he has a very interesting perspective. I mean, we I find it was a very philosophical conversation that took a lot of different paths. But for me, somebody who has, and I will say this, grown up in Canada, I lived in Germany, lived a little bit in the United States, but basically I would consider myself an extremely lucky person who grew up not wanting for anything. And, probably 1% of the world has lived the life that we live here. And so there's a lot of gratitude that I have for that. But having said that, even though we live privileged lives, and we're lucky, there's still a lot of trauma that happens in a lifetime, right? So for me personally, I think for me, I experienced a lot of trauma in my life. Um, that at one point you have to decide, am I going to be continue in the victim side of life, or am I going to um, feel the feels and go through my life and take a different path? And so I think that everybody has a different story and the traumas are different. But if you can tap into how to find peace, joy, happiness, your own spirituality, and find those things in your life, then you can live a more beautiful and fulfilled life somehow. I know I'm going off a little bit on a tangent, but we all have our stories. But when you take the route to explore and be curious, you can find that space to be able to feel good in your skin. And I think that's what we're kind of all about, right, Tash? Like, yes, we have a company that is a wellness company that sells skincare, supplements. Boutique Skin Envie is a company that offers all of that. But ultimately, what we really want for people who are part of our community is to feel good in their skin. And to feel good in your skin is not from only an exterior point of view, but it's also an interior point of view. So these kinds of meaningful conversations that we have are a reflection of what we hope for people somehow, if that makes any sense. So welcome to the podcast, Bhaskar.
Bhaskar, welcome back once again to the podcast. I think this might be your third, if not fourth time on our podcast. And we're so happy to have you. We always bring you back because we always have the best conversations with you. And I know I'm speaking on behalf of Beata and I, that we learn so much and we always leave our conversations feeling very enlightened and at peace. So before we get started, we mentioned off camera that you actually just got back from India, which is so exciting. So I mean, we've heard all about your story. Everybody knows what happened in India. Why did you go there? What did you learn from it? Tell us a little bit about that.
Firstly, thank you, Tash and Beata, for inviting me back. I'm grateful to be here with you both. Yes, it's been 2 days since I've been back from 1 month touring around India. And, I was born there, of course, but to go back with I would imagine the more maturity I have now, I got to see
Yeah.
it from a different orientation. And I did not really go there to be a tourist, to be enamored by the sights and sounds. I didn't really go there for, prayers and blessings and so on, which I respect. I really went there to feel into the land and understand the deep history that allows us to really understand more profoundly what it truly means to be human. That's the intention I went there with. And I have to say, I had some very profound experiences and insights that I'm very grateful for. And the magic of being human is very alive in me right now.
Can you share with our listeners some of the insights that you've learned from your trip?
Well, one very simple one is that, beyond the layer of differences, in terms of age, gender, religion, culture, social status, etc., it's so clear that we all want the same thing. We all want to live a good life, provide for the ones dependent on us, and we just go about in different ways. But when we peel off all the layers of differences, you find something that is very same. And also, when I was with the more tribal people, living a village life, I was really enamored and inspired by their inner wealth, their capacity to be content and joyful, and really be authentically curious without any agenda or performance. It was just very inspiring for me. I learned a lot from the people there. And now the ancient sites that predate even religion, now that's something truly otherworldly, that points to capacities that we perhaps even have now that have been dormant, inert, perhaps hidden, buried, suppressed for centuries, that I'm very curious about and feel that we can now access uh, through the enhancement in technology and things like that. So fascinating times we live in. We are certainly living in interesting times.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, Bhaskar. And, we talked a little bit about this before we started this episode, but I think we're living in I mean, what we're going through right now in the world is is part of evolution. I believe that. But I think that there's not necessarily a high vibration going on in the world right now with the chaos that's going on. And we don't need to get into all the politics and economy, the wars that are going on right now. But I think in general, what I feel is that people are having a really hard time navigating this time and how to actually be able to tap into the beauty of life and the joys of life, to be able to smile and enjoy their life, knowing all of this chaos that's happening. And there's also so much we don't know, really. In the
Right.
end of the day, we only know what's fed to us. But how can we, this concept of humanity and living on this earth and finding balance, but how to find the beauty and joy in these times that we're living. And I think it links a lot to maybe some of the experiences that you just recently had in India. And then you say that when you're a part of the village and you're living like the locals and how they navigate life through a very different world than what we're used to in the Western world, right? So can we talk a little bit about that? How do we find our place in all of this, and find peace and joy and beauty of life? Because there's so much of it.
Let's do it.
We just we just don't see it so much,
Yeah, let's
or a lot of
let's dive
people
right
don't.
into that. I'd like to
Yeah.
start by doing a little disclaimer, maybe. I love this quote by Bruce Lee. The Bruce Lee, the famous actor, martial artist, director, in a way, philosopher. He has this quote. He says, "Absorb what is useful, discard what is useless, add in what is specifically your own." That's the path to mastery. So I love our dear viewer, listener to kind of adapt that posture, to just take in. I may say things that do not resonate, or maybe not appropriate at the moment. Just discard that. Uh, Whatever resonates. I like the word absorb, which means don't just understand, intellectualize, make it a part of you. And then, of course, bring in your own life experiences and mastery to see if it sort of enhances your understanding of truth. So that disclaimer being said, here is the best of my understanding. To summarize, to me, it's all love. It's all love. The fundamental energy is love. And the way I see love, I've used this analogy of a pen, so there's this two ends of a pen. It appears to be a duality or a polarity, good, evil, right, wrong, Trump, Putin, whatever. You can go on like this, right? But what you're essentially seeing is like the same thing. And on one side, you have love, and on this other side, you have a longing for love. It is all love. It's all in the spectrum of love. And I think I mentioned before in the previous conversation together that when love manifests, pure love manifests in these three qualities of truth, goodness, and beauty. So when it's really apparent, the highest expression of love, you're in awe. It it's beautiful. You can hear a truth in it. It sounds true, and it emanates a certain quality of goodness. So this to me is ultimately it, is to see the unity in all things. So for some, it's very easy to see the love, yet on the other spectrum to see, this is simply a longing for love. So when we are seeing all the anger, resentment, ill will, and all the tragic things in society, just
Division
it's
too, eh?
yeah, the
Division.
divisiveness is untrue, yet it is just a longing for truth. So this is one way to frame it, where I'm a lover of these things. Like everybody else, who doesn't love truth, goodness, and beauty? Who wouldn't love that? We all want to be in that place. And which is why certain things I value deeply. For example, I deeply value respect. In fact, it's my foundational value, simply because acts of disrespect look ugly to me. They don't sound true to me, and they don't feel good. And you know, I learned in this trip in India that there are two forms of disrespect. One form is, say, when I look down on somebody. When I look down on somebody, and in India, you got the entire spectrum from some of the richest people in the world to homeless children with nothing but dust and garbage. And and then there you find yourself somewhere in the spectrum. And when I look down on somebody, this is an act of disrespect to the other person. That's very clear. Similarly, when I look up to somebody, that's a disrespect to myself. So I'm very much in the world of seeing with people, looking at another conscious divine being with choice just like me. And we all have all our unique skills, gifts, talents, attributes, zones of genius, which I appreciate and respect. Like, I think you both know, I'm a huge fan of the Buddha. I think he's got some good things going on. I have a lot of respect, and I appreciate, and I do my best to embody his teachings. Yet there is none of this looking up and looking down. We're all navigating through this life together. So that to me is a form of beauty. In India, it's sometimes difficult to navigate because there's so many homeless people who are looking to sell some trinket to make some food for their family or for themselves. Yet to when they're pulling at your shirt or your belt, just to really make contact with another conscious divine being, and with that contact with love, in sometimes saying no, not today, and then moving on. That to me is beautiful. And sometimes you see acts that are not beautiful, and sometimes you know of course, relative to some of the people I saw in India, I live a life of privilege, tremendous privilege. It has occurred to me very clearly that I saw lineups of people who've been lining for days. Any one of them would swap my worst day for their life anytime. That's how lucky I am, right? So um, I was really feeling into this whole notion of the privilege that we have in the Western world in terms of our external capacities and resources. And in the beginning, I must say I felt sheepish and sort of a little bit guilty. Who am I to just cut the queue with my VIP access when these people have been lining for days? It didn't feel right. I'm more comfortable, lining up or just being in a mud hut, eating with my hands off a banana leaf, kind of a thing. And the big shift happened for me was when I realized it's true. In this precious human birth, I have been born with privilege. I'm very grateful for that, and how to make best use of this to create an impact and that can be a benefit to all. So that was one aspect I found, was taking something that was a little bit stuck in me, we can call it ugly, and transmuting it or tai chiing it into something beautiful. Um, so yeah, I'll guess I just land with that. Just the notion that we're all in that same field of love. We're either expressing love or we're expressing a longing for love.
Wow, that is like takes me in all kinds of different areas. we either, yes, I think we need to dive a little bit deeper in what you mean by the longing for love, because love is something that you feel, right?
Yeah.
As a human, we feel love for somebody else. We feel love for what we're grateful for, let's say. But when you look at the chaos in our world today, how can you link that to the longing of love? So, like, how can we rationally understand
Yeah.
what's actually happening on that with that love and longing for love perspective,
Beautiful.
opposite ends?
S-
Does that make sense?
Absolutely
I
does.
don't know if that
Absolutely
makes
does.
sense, but
And I know that you both know this and you embody it as well. When you're in the presence of love, you can feel the truth, the goodness, and the beauty that's there, and it's intoxicating. It's very inviting. So that's the easy part. But when something is diabolical, something is truly intolerable, when somebody's behaving in ways that are in utter conflict with your values, where's the love in that, right? And so there's two ways to see this. As a social convenience, I call it outer reality and inner reality, outer world, inner world. So there's things that are not true, ugly, and not wholesome in the external world. We're all aware of this. You can feel it. It's repulsive. When you see suffering, undue suffering caused by ego, arrogance, etc. It's hard to fathom, much less digest. The principle always remains the same. Behind every unwholesome action, be it physical or verbal, there's an unpleasant feeling. And behind every unpleasant feeling, there's an unmet need. And the skill is to acknowledge, yet look past the unwholesome action, acknowledge and even look beyond the unpleasant feeling, and sense into the root need that is there. And that's that longing for love. Very often it might be a need to feel safe, or a need to feel free, or a need to feel appreciated, validated, a need to feel valued. These are all very beautiful. Yet you see people going about meeting these needs in very, very tragic ways. And if there's an openness to it, it's a beautiful thing to serve them in meeting their need. Yet if there's no openness to it, there's no readiness, then as far as I'm concerned, I have nothing to do there. It is not mine to do.
no, I know, but that's the challenge, right?
Mm.
Because how do we find a way to live with that and still have joy? Because I find, there's a lot of different layers to this. There's things that we can't control. There's sickness. There's, people that are, you said poverty and all these kinds of things. But when the human being has this ultimate desire of control, like, how can you navigate that as another human? Not, and also saying I have nothing to do with that, but that has a lot to do with your world that you're living in. So how do you, I know it's a very complicated question,
Love it. We need
but
to
I
ask
think
this
that,
question. We need to explore these questions. They're so important in
well,
our times. Yeah.
it's complicated because it's like that you can't control it.
Mm,
Okay, I'm going to go a little bit over to the right now.
mm,
There's this book that recently came out called Let Them, which is Mel Robbins.
mhm.
Have you read it?
I haven't read it, but I know of Mel Robbins. Yes.
Yeah, so, and it kind of, well, didn't kind of, it completely went viral and everybody is on it right now. And I think it leans in a little bit to what you can control and what you can control and how do you live your life. Let them show you who they are, let you make the decisions in your life on how you navigate through it. But I still think in today's world, it's easy to read it, to digest it, to understand it, but to practice it is something completely different, right? To be able to incorporate that into your life with everything going on. How?
All right.
Do you have some insight on that? I know I'm talking about a lot of different things and a lot of different angles, but I feel that there's a thirst
Mm.
for people to understand how and just to be able to find that how they live in this current
Let me offer
situation.
a practical example.
Okay.
Um, a lady from one of these warring countries reached out to me, and she was devastated, tormented, weeping, sobbing, quivering, couldn't sleep at night, hyper anxious. The medication was helping. She couldn't think of anything else, so she thought to reach out to me. She says, I can't sleep, I can't take it, I'm tormented. And, we did a few centering, calming practices, just coming into like a relative state of homeostasis. And then I practiced something with her called Kensho. It's contemplating opposites. So I asked her the question, or gave her the instruction, in these times, tell me what is yours to do. And she responded, Bhaskar, I don't want to argue and bicker and create hate and animosity. I just want to live a life of peace and harmony. Thank you. I asked her, in these times, tell me what's not yours to do. Well, what's not mine to do is argue with people on social media, is to try to, try to influence something I have no influence over. Thank you. Again, in these times, tell me what's yours to do. She said something, thank you. We went back and forth like this for 25 minutes. And in 25 minutes, she went from being totally frantic to being like a Zen master. Absolutely still and steady, because she had clarity on what is hers to do at these times and what is not yours to do. So you're no longer wasting energy, resources on things that you have no say over. I have no say over tariffs and geopolitical things. I have no say over that. Why would I put my attention on it? Yet I do have some say over connecting with you both and expressing my truth. And I'll put my attention there. So this kind of clarity really helps us navigate through these times. Put all your attention 100% all in what's yours to do, and what's not yours to do, as the book would say, let them. Now, I'll go a level deeper in this, peeling the onion a little bit deeper. And this is where it might get a little trippy for some people, maybe not. I've always experienced myself as consciousness making contact with content, and I call that Bhaskar. So right now, I'm aware of my vocal cords vibrating. I can feel my heart beating. I have this emotion of affinity towards you both. I see the image, lights, colors, shapes of you both, and my consciousness is making contact with that. And I'm calling that Bhaskar in this moment. And that's like a light of consciousness. Now, as is true for me, it's also true for you. I'm just looking at this example here. You also have the same light of consciousness that I can sense into, and it's going through your personality, your identity, your physical appearance. It's a little bit like when you go to a church, you have these beautiful stained glass windows, and the light, sunlight goes through this beautiful image of Christ or Mary, and you have this beautiful projection into the church. Or you go to a Buddhist monastery, the stained glass windows that of Buddha, and you have this image of the Buddha. Or you go to a Hindu temple, and there's the image of Krishna, and the light goes through the image of Krishna. Or you go to a mosque, and there's geometrical patterns, the light goes through, makes these beautiful patterns. So in a way, we're all like a stained glass mirror, and there's a light of consciousness coming through us all. Now, for some of us, the stained glass window is a little bit thin, and you can see the light very easily. And for some, that window is really, really thick or very, very dusty, let's say, full of dust and grime, right? So, to me, what really worked for this lady who reached out to me was not so much me. It was her own willingness and capacity to live a better life. And that's a precondition nobody can give you. It's like nobody can force the fruit to be ripe on the tree. If it's not ripe, it's not ready, right? No matter how much I want to eat that fruit or, do what, well, it doesn't work. So you have to wait for the readiness. And that readiness is a willingness and capacity to live a more examined life, to live a more truthful, good, and beautiful life. If that's there, that's all that's required.
I am loving Jan Marini's Luminate Eye Gel. I've been using it for months, and it's my favorite product for tackling dark circles, puffiness, and crepiness. It's packed with retinol power, but gentle enough for everyone. And if you're dealing with milia, its gentle formula hydrates without being too rich. You apply it under eyes only and never on the lids. And remember, as with most retinols, there's an acclimation period. So start slowly, like 2 to 3 nights per week, and then gradually increase to every night. I promise you won't be disappointed. If you want to try this product, go to beskinenvie.ca. That's BSKINENVIE.ca and use code SKINTALKS to get 10% off your first order. But what if somebody doesn't know how to access that because they're so consumed by other things that are going on in their life? How can somebody access that? If it's just a regular person that's just like her, if she wouldn't have reached out to you and had your help and or somebody else, how could somebody access that?
My role is not to fix anybody or to make somebody better. I first of all assess whether there is a willingness and capacity here for me to have an effect, have an impact on this person. And what I'm looking to do is really to understand. So when somebody has a very, very thick and the light of consciousness is not so hard to perceive because there's this thick layer of identity, or they're buried in unexamined beliefs, values, ideologies, that don't stand the scrutiny of truth, goodness, and beauty, and they don't want to let go of that. I can understand that they're holding on to that because it gives them a sense of belonging or it gives them a sense of safety. And that's good. I'm good with that. And if they want to examine that or to live a lighter life, I'm here for them. But I'm not here to convince you to do that. You know what I mean? I'm just here to understand why you are the way you are. And I love the light coming through you. I may not love the actions and the ideologies and the behaviors. I don't have to accept it. I don't have to tolerate it. So it's the notion of and this is really a saint-like quality. What I'm pointing to might sound simple, but it's not easy. Is to love the essence without tolerating the intolerable. I do not accept disrespect. I do my very best to conduct myself with respect. And if you're behaving disrespectfully and you're hell bent on that, and that's yours to do, you go right ahead. You're also conscious being with choice just like me. If that's how you choose to behave, perfectly fine. I just want nothing to do with that. And when you're ready to examine that, I'm here for you.
That's the let them.
Let them. Yeah.
That's yeah.
And I'm telling you, Viera and Tash, I think you guys can feel into this. As the pendulum swings more towards the conflict, the polarizing, we're all sensing to something deeply human, and that does not look right. That does not sound right. And we're in a
Yeah.
position now to question all these archaic systems that no longer stand the scrutiny of truth, goodness, and beauty. It might have worked in the past, but we're not living in that reality anymore. We're living in a whole different reality. So a willingness to suspend our ideologies and principles and not to double down on something just because of habit, I think is very, very helpful. This to me, and again, this is my truth, not everybody's truth. I do not subscribe or acquiesce to any school of thought that allows me to kind of absorb what is best in everything, discard what is useless and no longer valuable, and bring in my own truth. I think we live in a time when we can do this, and it's beneficial because you can see the beauty and goodness and truth in so many things. Take that on. Why restrict yourself to, like a cow just having grass? Have all the stuff. You have so much to absorb from. So many traditions teach so beautifully. At the same time, there's also a lot of nonsense and ignorance happening in all these places as well, which do not resonate with me. So I'll summarize by saying this. If I'm hearing words, emotions of unifying, that sounds true to me. If I'm hearing divisiveness, it might be accurate, but it hasn't really touched the depth of truth yet.
Okay. That's like, it's a lot to think about, right? A lot to feel also. I think that we have to tap into to feeling that. And I guess my question is, how do we do that? Is that through quietness, meditation, movement?
Yeah, now we get to the good stuff. So we just talked about the outer reality, the objective reality.
Yeah.
Now we're getting to the subjective reality, the inner world. We all love the beautiful emotions, joy, exuberance, happiness, all these things feel so good. And inside of us, well, we tend to reject, the ones that are, let's say, heavier, tighter, darker, like our own, fear, anger, guilt, shame, regret, all that stuff, the low vibration stuff that don't make us feel so good. And I'll express this as well in all transparency that I did spend like a consistent amount of time with my mom in India. And those who know, moms are great saint makers. They know where your buttons are, right? They put them there quite often with all the love and respect.
That's
So,
hilarious.
uh,
That's true.
and every now and again, there are certain things that remind me of my childhood that brought up in me, frustrations that I had not experienced for a very long time since I've been away from my homeland for so long. And and this is quote unquote an ugliness in my subjective reality. And my realization was there's nothing ugly about the anger, the hatred. The ugliness is when we unconsciously act from that place. So I really, when I felt that frustration in my body and I started behaving in ways that are misaligned with my truth, raising my voice, being disrespectful, and so on, I took the time to just sit with that frustration, literally as a sensation, an aspect in my body. And just allowing it that spacious presence without any grasping or clinging. I call that love. And then really communing with it, you know, frustration. Why are you here? What is it that you want me to achieve? What do you want from me? And I felt my own body responding, respect. And then again, I feel the respect. And what else do you want? And I kept on peeling the layers of the frustration. And you know what I found? I had this flashback into my childhood when I was about 7 years old. I won't go into details very much, but nevertheless, there was an incident. I had the exact same sensation, that incident, 7 years old, when I felt wildly disrespected in front of my friends. And it was like the exact same thing that just showed up again. It was quite remarkable how it traced back to that 7-year-old boy. And and then I had a chance to go to my mother and say, I sincerely apologize for the way I behaved. I have this thing inside me that makes me frustrated when I experience this. And in that openness, I call it authenticity. It allowed my mother permission as well to speak about her truth and why she behaved the way she behaves and her history. And it created a beautiful, tender moment where we just hugged each other and cried profoundly. It was a very healing experience. So, and I guess this could be called loving those parts of you that we might otherwise try to hide, bury, suppress, and distract ourselves from, or put on a superficial coating of happiness. So what I've understood is those things that in us that we'd like to reject are actually also good, true, and beautiful because they're coming from the other end of the same spectrum. They are aspects of us that are longing for love. And when I really listen to it, they bring me back to love. So those are there that are sort of inviting me to evolve into a more purer version of love. So what a blessing that is.
Yeah, I think people are there. People are often not paying attention to the feelings that they have in their body when
Yeah,
they
they're not self-aware.
like.
They
There's,
lack
let's say,
that.
triggers, right? And it's a trigger. Your trigger was frustration. That's the way I describe it. And we all have them. Like I have sometimes triggers, and I'm all of a sudden something happens, and I'm like, why am I feeling like this right now? Where is this coming from? And I guess with experience,
That
go
also
ahead.
took you a lot of time and like learnings and meditation and yoga and different things for you to be able to get to that point where you asked yourself, why am I feeling like that?
I
Whereas
think
I'm
we need,
sure for
yeah,
the
Yeah.
beginning of your life when you were feeling frustration or
you divert away.
anger, it was something that you just like put out, as in like raise your voice, get angry, or you would hide under the rug, which could also
Yeah. Express or repress.
manifest into
Exactly.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. not allowing yourself to feel the feelings is what I think I did it in my life. I think a lot of people do it in their life because of fear of rejection or fear of having to go back there and feel it again. And so you just like, you knock it away, you knock it away, you knock it away. You don't peel it off. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's very interesting. And in also to be able to do that from a place of love is also something that is interesting, because I think that a lot of people, when they're feeling feelings, let's say, for example, those moments that you had with your mother where you were like explaining whatever it was, the reason that you were feeling the frustration. But I find in our society a lot of the time, instead of going into that, when this happens, this is how I feel. And it's more of, when you do this to me, you're doing this to me and you're causing me these feelings, which I don't like. So it's like blaming, so that there's no longer that it's like you're clashing two people together and they just absolutely, then the other one goes on defensive, and then it becomes this like back and forth exchange that is really not productive in any way spiritually or in any way whatsoever. So it's how you communicate and allow those feelings to come through, you know, in a place that's not pointing a finger, where the other one can hear it also. Because sometimes we don't even hear what somebody else is actually saying to us. We're so busy reacting, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this could speak to the whole notion of truth. You know, what is truth? So truth is only true from my perspective. I don't have a grasp on eternal absolute truth. I only have truth from my unique perspective. So I often give the example like, what do you see? I see a phone, but I'm seeing something else. I have this view, you have this view. My truth is this, your truth is this. So, so we're not seeing the same things. I can only speak to what I'm experiencing. And, you know, we've experienced this before, that I can only speak about my truth, which is, when I experienced this, I felt this because I have a need for this. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering how you experienced it. What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? Right?
Yeah.
So taking the full responsibility for that state. What we are resisting is not out there. It's in here. We're not resisting light, color, shape, sound. It's how it's making us feel. You know, so we have sensory input from our senses that's creating a sensation or an emotion. And what we're resisting is that, though, that's what's inside of us. So speaking in that way, who's going to argue with your truth? It's your truth. When I saw this, I felt this because I have a need for this. Who's going to argue with that? Which is very different to when you did this to me. So I often say that there are a few words you want to avoid if you want to have an impactful conversation. One word is you.
Yeah.
Avoid that word, because what that does, the reptilian brain comes up, the
Yeah.
defense mechanism. Am I going to be insulted here? Is my self-esteem going to be diminished? You know, so that
Yeah.
the other person's ego becomes on high alert. And the other word that is not often used skillfully is the word but. So, you know, we was, this
Yeah.
was very
But
nice, but, and you negate everything that was nice. So to look to replace the word but with yes and the other word I look to avoid, the third word I avoid in conversation is the word no. Because you can feel that word no creates a contraction. This is happening since childhood, you know? Can I have the popsicle? No. Contraction, right? The word no has a way of contracting. So finding skillful ways to express, you know, I understand you, and here's what I want instead. Expressing it in that way is much more skillful. So finding skillful ways to communicate that leave the aperture of affinity open, because that's the foundation of communication. Without affinity, there's no communication happening. There's just two hurt emotions battling each other. So
and coming from a place of trauma too, in a way, there's trauma behind it, right? And I think in a lot of ways that if we could, as a collective, figure out a way to navigate through that within ourselves, it will have such a positive effect globally as a community, in business, in relationships, in friendships, in family, in anything that we touch somehow, instead of coming from that place of defense. You know, I think it would, I think that community aspect of approaching this particular subject so important in the world that we live in today. And if we can do it on a small scale within our own group of who we touch, it's an opportunity for it to build out and have more of a collective impact on the world that we live in.
Yet I call this the 3 C's that I find the most valuable in society right now: contact, community, and conversation. These 3 things are so important. By contact, we're referring to the whole field of mindfulness. Consciously making contact with you, contact with my inner state, that's contact. There's a quality of contact that can be cultivated, a richness, a depth, and sensitivity. Community, the sense of belonging. We're living in silos so much and afraid of each other. And so coming together, that I offer this thing called the Wisdom Cafe, where anybody can come and we have this community building experience where everybody's welcome and holding each other in truth, goodness, and beauty. And conversation. Again, real deep, meaningful conversation. So often we don't allow ourselves that. It almost feels like we're walking on eggshells or broken glass with people because there are tender areas everywhere. So to have a space where you can really feel heard, understood, appreciated, and vice versa, doing the same for others, this is tremendously healing in our times. I can think of nothing more helpful than creating these little hubs where people feel that contact, community, and real meaningful conversation about things that truly matter under the surface.
I have been using the SkinCeuticals PTOX for a couple of weeks now, and I have to say I'm obsessed. This product is a needle-free anti-wrinkle peptide serum that visibly reduces 9 types of expression lines and reveals glass skin radiance. It's a great product to start using when you're not quite ready for injections, or like me, it's the perfect complementary product to use in conjunction with my Botox sessions to maximize wrinkle correction. I even have a couple of friends who have been using the product and have noticed change in their skin texture and any deep wrinkles they may have. You have to try it. Trust me on this. If you want to try the product, go to bskinenvie.ca. That's BSKINENVIE.ca and use code SKINTALKS to get 10% off your next order.
So for me, when I hear that gives me a lot of feeling of hope in a way, because I think we're capable of it. And I think that that's where we can find this space in our lives also where we can experience the beauty of life and the joy of life in uncertain, crazy, chaotic times, let's just say. If we can do practice those things somehow step by step in our life, we can't do it all at the same time. That's where we can bring the beauty back in our own lives and feel the joy of life, because there's so much of it around us, right?
Beautiful. Yeah. I wonder if we can broach a very tender subject. I'm sensing there is an undercurrent of existential dread. Some people are feeling it, some people aren't. There's an undercurrent.
Say again, Bhaskar, of
There's an undercurrent of existential dread. The whole notion of I'll just put it bluntly, like AI controlled humanity, and suddenly you have technology that far surpasses, our known human capacities. It can think better than us. It can mimic creativity better than us. It can do manual work way better than us. And a lot of us are feeling, what's my place here?
Right.
I'm going to
There's
lose my
fear.
job. I'm going to lose this. What am I going to do? I know that AI can do this job way better than me. It's just a matter of time before I get replaced, and then how am I going to provide for my family? That's the reality of our times. There is an undercurrent of existential dread because we are living in unfathomable times of change. Nothing like this. It's way bigger than the wheel and the fire and, farming. This change is literally replicating and replacing our so-called human resource capacities, right? So what does it truly mean to be human is no longer a question for philosophers and, the Socrates is a debate for years and years. This has become to me, a very essential question to ask ourselves. In these times, what is it that we're trying to preserve? What is it that we're looking to thrive in what we're calling human? And this is where we go into the practices of mindfulness, of living a more examined life, having a genuine curiosity around what does it actually mean to be human?
Mm-hmm.
And I've experienced that meditation practices give us some very profound clues that are very, very helpful in these times. They give us access to states and capacities that that we can cherish, that can really not be touched by algorithms. Yeah. So, so this I think is a very, very important, essential question of our times. No longer do we need to worry about how to make the next widget or how to, write the great book. Frankly, AI can do it exponentially better than human capacities. That's the
Yeah.
reality, right? So, so this is something I find fascinating. And this is the reason why I go to these ancient sites. So this is the reason I went to these ancient sites in India. I'm going to Peru in a couple of months. I find they hold clues to something that AI can actually help us remember. This is what I call AI enhanced humanity, which is more utopic, right? We can suddenly do
Mhm.
things we could not do before because we no longer need to limit ourselves as human resources. We can now unleash our full capacities because robots and algorithms can do other stuff that we were doing before. So as Dickens said, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It depends where you put your attention. And so this being human, having a curiosity about it, I find is essential for our time. And it's also fun. It's beautiful. Why not explore this for the few breaths we have left?
Yeah, I agree.
Wow.
What a question, because I have no idea what the answer is.
No, but I think that, that's a very good question. And
Mm.
also, you need to create a quiet space for yourself to be able to tap into what that means for you, right?
Yeah.
Um, and to block out like the noise, not to absorb in what doesn't belong to you, and to be able to find what that is, explore what that is, listen to what that is, because it's all there. We just have to listen to it, to tap into it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For somebody who has not been initiated into the world of meditation or the inner sciences, it, just a just a portal of curiosity. What if there's a world outside my senses that I have not yet explored? What if I can experience things outside, my lights, lights, colors, the shapes of my eyes, sounds of my ears? What if I can experience things that are more invisible yet tangible, like emotions, thoughts, energy, information, intelligence? And once we start being curious about that, we start seeing much deeper into what it truly means to be human. And I tell you, it is so beautiful. Being human is so beautiful. Um,
Yeah, definitely. Um, but I think sometimes it's hard for people because they like hide, like they live in so much comfort of like just living in a way and not experience like not asking those certain questions or not bringing awareness to their life or asking like what do I hear outside my ears, like like I think there's a sometimes like a huge disconnect with people because there's a fear towards getting down to the bottom or maybe like even be becoming more aware of yourself and like learning who you are, like, and that's like I don't think that's just like one generation. I think that's ancestral too, right? So it's like for some people it's so hard to break that down and
Well,
like
yeah, they reject it. There's a rejection of not wanting to look or see something.
there's no interest. There's not even like for some people there's just no interest in getting there, which like I don't know. I think that that's hard for some people.
and I would say it's very understandable as well because their whole
Yeah.
worldview is based on that. Their entire identity is based on
Yeah.
that. So letting go of that is a death. It really feels like a death of sorts. I can't let
Hmm.
go of this. This is what I've, I've imagined I was all my life. You know,
This is who I
this is
am.
who
My
I
entire
am. I am this, I am that, I
identity
belong to
attached
this, I
to it.
believe that. And letting go of that is fearful
Painful.
because it's a form of death, really. And
Hmm.
Yeah.
yes, we have to be able to go into that feeling and still remain curious. uh, it's one of those things, I think we can all experience this. There's a right time for it, and it's different for different people. There, either through something serendipitous or just the sheer heat and torment of life, something cracks. Uh,
Yeah, something pushes you
Something
almost too
pushes you.
far where you have to. Yeah, we were just actually recording another episode with this woman who like had a lot of spirit, like she was a very spiritual child at the age of 5 and said she had all these like experiences and was really like, having her moments as a 5-year-old or as a kid and then became very rational in her life and then had certain events that happened to her that pushed her into like she surrendered because she was like all these things were happening and she was losing complete control of her kids, of her like ex-husband's, like all these different things she was losing control of, and that ultimately she like took a step back and was like, what's going on? Like, why is everything falling apart? And then at that point just like surrendered to, I guess, her spirits around her telling her where to go and navigating her life for her. So like that's for an example, when you get pushed too far, you then like instead of pushing back, maybe you should just try to surrender a little bit and see what happens to you.
Beautiful. The two capacities that are worth developing is one, to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is very, very
Hard.
helpful. This is going to be physically or mentally.
Yeah.
Develop the capacity to be comfortable even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And the other one, like with your friend, this a willingness to question everything. A willingness to question everything, and not from a belligerent kind of arrogant kind of a place, from a more innocent way. I wonder if this is really true for me.
Mm-hmm.
So these two things, they kind of go hand in hand a little bit, because when you start to be uncomfortable, you start to question stuff. Yeah, and that's where your growth edge is. And we've built a society that is so hunkered down on control and comfort. We love these two things. We love to control our life and we love to be comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we will do anything to hold on to our delusion of control and this obsession with comfort. So, one of my clients is about to go on a trip, and she's planning profusely for this trip. And yes, plan enough. Plan enough so that you take the right medication, whatever it might be. At the same time, trust your physical, mental, emotional, energetic, spiritual capacity to handle what shows up, and know that what is showing up is inviting you to evolve and grow. That the whole experience is working for you, and be open
Mm-hmm.
to that experience. And that's we got to let go of the idea of control, so you can let in something that is outside that you have not accessed yet. So these are things that are worth exploring. Allow yourself to feel uncomfortable now and again. Take a cold shower, you know, walk barefoot, whatever it is. And allow yourself to also let go of control. Take a path you haven't taken before. Go to an event you haven't been to before and just see what happens. I mean, don't go
Yeah.
crazy with it. Don't throw yourself into a well or something,
Yeah.
Keep your
Like
discernment,
moderation.
but just
Yeah.
explore the boundary with respect, with dignity. And that's going to help
Yeah.
open up that portal of curiosity, and also learning something new that that might be very valuable.
Mm-hmm. And also understanding different perspectives too. When you do that, we come from a lot of our own place of our own perspectives without considering the other perspectives. When you become curious and ask questions and go through this process, you also you learn to see things from others' sides as well.
Mm.
And that opens doors to new opportunities as well, and life changes when you see things from different perspectives, I find, because I've personally experienced that myself. So, very interesting.
I refer to this as listening to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Developing that skill of listening, and not just listening with the ears, listening with your whole being, not to
Mm-hmm.
agree, disagree, like or dislike, but listening to understand another perspective. And the hardest thing we can ever do is to remain neutral when we think we are right.
Yeah.
And just simply listen to understand the other perspective. And there's something very healing when we say, thank you, I understand, and really mean it. I really understand your perspective. I may not like it. I'm going to agree with it. I do understand it. I understand where you're coming from. That is very powerful. So you can actually take in another perspective, and you may even change your perspective once you've really absorbed that other perspective. Yeah.
Because we get stuck, right?
Yeah.
We do get stuck. So it's that's when you can understand it is very important, I think.
So that's the weird thing about the outer world, inner world. The very thing you resist in the outer world is really a gift for the inner world. Yeah, the very people that rub you the wrong way, that trigger you, that make you, all flustered, they're the ones who are actually a gift to your inner world, because now you can actually be in that discomfort and learn something about yourself. And once it is
I
learned.
listened to a podcast, Bhaskar. I
Okay.
don't know if you've heard of this before. It was a while ago, so I don't know if I remember it exactly correctly. People and situations in your life are either a mirror, a window, or a door.
Wow. Please clarify that. I'd love to know more about this.
Well, I would have to go back and listen to that
Okay.
podcast, but it's like you reminded me of that because sometimes the most difficult things that we deal with in our lives
Mm,
are actually teaching us the most, the things that we need to know, you know? So
mm,
let's say, for example, you speak to one person and they irritate you all the time, every time they open their mouth, but what are you actually learning? It's maybe something that they're saying that you don't want to hear.
yeah.
And you learn, if you can identify what that is, you actually learn from them, even though you can't stand them, kind of thing. And there's a lot. I'll try and find the podcast and send it
Please
to you.
do.
But
I love it. I'm getting a sense of what it
it was
means, and
Jay
I
Shetty.
resonate. Yeah. Yeah.
It was Jay Shetty. I'm pretty sure it was Jay Shetty because I find he has some interesting. He interviews a lot of interesting people, and I think this was a solo episode. But it just made me think about things that no matter what it is, the willingness and openness to understand and learn different things that are not necessarily um, what we've been taught to learn or
Mm.
to understand. You know, there's always something in everything.
I love it. I feel we can almost bookend it with a simple offering, which is just being curious about living a more beautiful, a more good, and a more true life. I think that curiosity is all it takes, and just start somewhere and follow it everywhere. We all have it. I don't think I'm speaking to something that's foreign to anybody. Just the willingness to live a more true, good, and beautiful life. And all that we do that moves us in a direction is what's ours to do. And what doesn't move in a direction will die of natural atrophy because we give it no attention. It's the attention that keeps it going. Once you take the attention away, there's no energy behind it.
Yeah,
Could it really be that simple?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank
Amazing.
you so much.
Thank
This
you
was
so much
great.
again.
I know, like my head is like, okay, I'm going to start to think about all these things. Today we've had two very interesting conversations with you and like Natasha was talking about
Yeah.
before, that really, they're make you
Make you
go
reflect.
make you go inside.
Yeah.
And I love that. So thank you for the time that you've given us today. We really appreciate it.
We always love having you on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for making this life more truthful, more good, and more beautiful in your beautiful, unique ways. I really appreciate
Thank
you
Thank
you.
both
you.
so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Bhaskar.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a moment to rate, review, and follow us on social at Skin Talks Pod. We'll see you next week.